Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I have said on this platform that MDC CCC leaders are ZANU-PF Team B, playing for Team A to win and to have legitimacy. The understanding of that concept, that reality, is at the heart of really finally trying to address the problem of Zimbabwe's failure to hold free, fair, and credible elections. I've said MDC, the people of Zimbabwe, for the last 25 years, they've risked all to elect MDC leaders, CCC leaders, for one primary purpose: to implement the democratic reforms necessary to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections. So when you find the opposition you have elected to carry out the purpose of dismantling ZANU-PF have themselves become ZANU-PF Team B, playing for Team A to win and for Team A to have legitimacy, you have a problem. No wonder you've not been able to carry out anything. MDC CCC leaders have failed to implement even one token democratic reform in the 25 years they've been on the political stage, including the 5 years when they were in the GNU of 2008 to 2013, when they had the golden opportunity to implement those reforms. And ever since the GNU debacle, MDC leaders have participated in flawed elections to give the ZANU-PF legitimacy. They knew the process is flawed. They knew that by participating, they are giving ZANU-PF legitimacy. I've often quoted this quotation from David Coulthard's book that is there on the screen for you, underlying and emphasizing that very point. We cannot pretend that the MDC leaders did not know that the electoral process is flawed and is illegal, and that participating in it would only give ZANU-PF legitimacy. They knew it. They've known it all along. And in this quotation, David Coulthard explains why they've continued to participate regardless. He writes, but such was the distrust between MDCT and MDCN that neither could withdraw for fear the other would remain in the election, winning seats. That cannot be any plainer than that. So they were participating in a flawed process, which they knew is flawed. They knew it's illegal. And they also knew that it was the only logical step was to withdraw, but they could not, because they each wanted to stay in and win the few gravy trains since they knew ZANU-PF was dangling to entice the opposition to participate. That is the reality. And we cannot run away from it. Here is one instance where you've got the smoking gun, if you want. Proof that our friends, MDC, CCC, are ZANU-PF Team B in all but name. This is the Constitutional Court challenge of the presidential result of 2018. I'd like you to listen very carefully to the court proceedings and focus on the issue of the 16 V11. This is the V11 form is the summary of the results from each polling station. In the affidavits from ZEC, there were 16 V11 forms that had identical results. Let's focus on that issue in the video.
There is the issue of identical polling results. There are at least 16 polling stations with identical results. Identical results for Chamisa, identical results for Mnangagwa, identical spoiled votes. And in all those places, Mnangagwa not only wins, but wins big. It's like a kid was playing with the figures. That, with respect, is not how an election is conducted.
We'll now give the opportunity to Mr. Kanengoni.
The Zimbabwe Electoral Commission cannot be taken to task to say, why is the voter turnout in my central at this particular level and not at that particular level? Voters behave the way they do. No one knows why. Maybe behavioral scientists may be able to answer the question if they study it.
Mr. Kanengoni, there's the averment that several polling stations showed identical results.
And the simple point we make is that there's no need to be theoretical about it. We have the returns. This is something that happened. We show you the returns. And we've put the returns for 2 of those polling stations here to illustrate the point.
You say it happened?
Yes.
But in his presentation, Paul says it's actually 16 polling stations where the identical results. You heard it?
Yes, we did. Even in the affidavit, they put a bit more of the polling stations there. But we chose this to illustrate to the court. But for the rest, it did happen. It did actually occur.
We'll now go back to the applicant. Why go for speculative conclusions of manipulation?
The point that I wish to make is that this is evidence of manipulation by ZEC after the process. Now, if you go to what they call the primary data, you're going to see manipulated data. So the applicant cannot ask a court to open residue, which has already been manipulated. If you go to the residue, you drink from a poisoned well.
This is utter nonsense. The law is very clear on this point. Part of the electoral process, the vote counting and the declaring of the results, is that each polling station, when they've gone through the counting, all the materials relating to that electoral process must be put in the ballot box and the ballot boxes sealed in case there is any dispute. And if there should be a dispute, the court is the one that is empowered to authorize the breaking of the seal of those ballot boxes. In the presence of witnesses, that is another procedure. But the purpose, the primary purpose of sealing all the materials is if there is any dispute at all, they can go to the primary source and verify what actually happened. What is clear here is that there is no way you're going to have two stations in which the total number of ballots cast is exactly the same. The votes cast for each of the candidates is exactly the same. The votes, the spoiled votes, exactly the same. And what is even more interesting here is that in all these 16, so we are not talking of just 2, we are talking of 16 polling stations where 2 polling stations have got identical results in every respect. And there are 16 of them. What is also interesting about those 16 polling stations is that Mnangagwa did not only win, he won big, as Chamisa's lawyer admitted. The only rational explanation for it is that those V11 forms were actually double entries. There was no polling station A and polling station B with identical results. All they did is re-enter or use the same V11 to enter the total, to top up Mnangagwa's votes. A double entry. If they generated a V11 for the sake of the affidavits, that affidavit, that V11 was a duplicate. And the only way to end the speculation, like the judge referred to there, was to go back to the sealed ballot boxes. That is why they are there. That is why the court, the procedure says, the law says, you must have the sealed boxes sealed and signed after the counting is done and kept in a safe place in case there's any dispute. Going to the sealed boxes would have shown that in reality, as much as one can duplicate, write another V11 form, you cannot duplicate a polling station and all the officials and all the paperwork that was supposed to go with it. So insisting in seeing those sealed ballot boxes would have shown immediately that that second polling station was a ghost. There is your smoking gun. This election process was rigged. So here is Chamisa and this team, they have the smoking gun. And yet they are the ones who say, no, we don't want it. Why? I think the Constitutional Court challenge of 2018 was meant to be another charade. Both Team A and Team B knew that ZANU-PF was rigging the elections. But they wanted to give the people the impression that they are fighting, that they are trying to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections, or at least getting away with the rigged elections. But I think those 16 duplicate entries was something that neither of them had anticipated. But now that they'd gone to the Constitutional Court challenge, they had to deal with. And so Chamisa and company knew the only way they could save Team A the embarrassment is to refuse to have the ballot boxes opened. But this is also shedding light on the Constitutional Court judges themselves. They were not presiding over an ordinary case here of A versus B. The elections was a national issue of great national importance. The fact that the elections should be free, fair, and credible is not only in the interest of Chamisa versus Mnangagwa, MDC versus ZANU-PF, is in the national interest. Why did the court itself accept speculative results? The court itself could have ordered on the day that they would want to see all the sealed ballot boxes and have them opened in the presence of court witnesses before the matter would continue. As much as Chief Justice Malaba wanted to point out to Chamisa and team that you should not go for speculative results, he himself knew the court does not have to go to accept speculative results. This is not just a question of if one lawyer fails to represent or to state his case, or tough luck for him. This is in the national interest. The nation was watching. The nation was aware of what was going on here. The nation was concerned that elections were being rigged, that the elections were rigged. If the courts were genuinely committed to free, fair, and credible elections, I believe they too would have demanded that all the 16 polling stations relating to the 16 V11 forms that had identical results must be opened. That was the smoking gun. Why would you not, as a court, want to conclusively pronounce your judgment on the basis of clear-cut evidence and not speculative evidence? I believe the Constitutional Court challenge of 2018 exposed both ZANU-PF, were the primary beneficiary of the vote rigging in Zimbabwe. ZEC were doing the voting, the vote rigging on behalf of the regime. The judiciary were doing the regime the favor of turning a blind eye to the rigging. And our friends, MDC CCC leaders, who were ZANU-PF Team B, playing for Team A to win and for Team A to have legitimacy. All those parties were exposed in 2018. And therefore, then it comes as little surprise at all that when ZANU-PF blatantly rigged the 2023 elections, as much as Chamisa and company made a fuss about challenging the results, they were not going to do it. And that's the truth. Think about it.